Can Gen Z truly envision a future where retirement isn't some distant, long-off dream? That's the burning question that I've been wondering a lot recently, so I've done a lot of research into it. I'm going to summarize everything that I found for you as well. By watching this video, you'll have a much better picture of what retirement will look like when us as Gen Z get to that point in our life. And spoiler alert, it's going to look very different to what you've been told and what previously retirement has looked like. So this video is going to attempt to answer three main questions. Is retirement still achievable for Gen Z? If it is, what does that look like for Gen Z? And then number three is, what do you have to do to actually be able to reach retirement? So to take a look at what retirement looks like later on for us, I wanted to have a look at what currently retirement looks like and what are some of the biggest factors that are allowing people to retire and why that retirement looks the way it does. See, when baby boomers were 20, they were looking at a very different future to what us as 20-year-olds now are looking at. Today, Gen Z has 86% less buying power than boomers did back when they were 20. So since 1970, wages have gone up 80%, but the consumer pricing index has gone up 500%. According to a report done by Deloitte, millennials, which obviously include Gen Z, have experienced slower income growth compared to previous generations. If you adjust for inflation, it looks about 20% less than what the boomers had. Now that leads me also onto employment opportunities. Now, us 20-year-olds are looking very different to the landscape that 20-year-olds did when they were boomers. There is typically a lot of stable jobs around, and you could have a thing like a job for life where you would leave school, join this company, and you would work up at the company, and you'd earn a good salary from starting, and it would just get better as you got older. You can see this in the statistics as well from the Bureau of Labor. They found that in 1979, the ages of 25 to 34, 70% of the adults were in full-time work. If we fast forward to 2019, that number is only 63%. Okay, stable employment is just less of a thing now than it was back then. So currently Gen Z has less buying power and their job opportunities are less than what the boomers had when they were 20 years old. You've got to look at other factors that are affecting 20-year-olds as well and the Gen Z millennial type. And this is going to be housing affordability and education. Just to put it into perspective, in the US, according to the National Association of Realtors, the median price of existing homes in the US has increased from 100% since 1980, far outpacing wage growth. And this disparity is basically showing the decline in home ownership rates throughout young adults. In the UK, it's a very, very similar story. According to the ONS data that was showing, on average, house prices in the UK have increased by 248% since 1999 to 2020. In contrast, wages have only gone up 93%. And that's during the same period, highlighting that there is a huge gap between how much you get paid and how much house prices have been appreciating. I say this because part of the world of retirement is a lot of these people who are retired currently don't pay a mortgage payment. They have paid their house off. If you're looking at a world where you will always have a mortgage payment or always have a rent payment, that is a very different retirement. A lot of us will be familiar with the increase in education costs as well. We are seeing unprecedented levels of student debt within, the US and in the UK. Retirement is all about extrapolation, and at the moment, if you are saddled with loads of debt and you're going to get into more debt or physically can't afford a home, your retirement is going to look very different to what was promised back 40 years ago. It looks pretty bleak right now, but I just wanted to cover where we're currently facing, what most 20-year-olds are looking at, so that you can get an accurate picture. The traditional idea of retirement is still achievable, but it will just look slightly different. See, things that are currently getting enjoyed by retirees, things like the state pension and being able to pay your mortgage off, probably won't be there in the future for us at retirement. The state pension definitely won't be there. The money and everything, there's just no physical way, because we're an aging population and other factors, there will be no state pension when we get there. But you can still contribute to your private pension and you will still get to the traditional retirement picture that you're probably thinking of. But just like we covered with the landscape, the 20-year-olds looking at this landscape is very different to the 20-year-olds back in the day. It's the same thing retirement. Back then looked a certain way, retirement now will not look the same. So we've answered question number one, which is, can you actually still retire? We've answered that you can, it's just going to look a little bit different. Now I want to go over what exactly that actually looks like. Now there's a lot of opinions that float about online, and maybe you've heard people in your life talk about them as well. Like Gen Z, they would be able to buy a house if they just didn't buy as much avocado on toast. They're spending all their money on stupid things like that. Then they'd be able to buy a house. We were doing the same back in our day. We never ate out. And things like, oh, Gen Z are just too lazy, and if they worked harder, they'd be able to get to where they want to go, blah, blah, blah. Although some of that may be true for some people in the generation, whatever. What I like doing is sticking to the facts and the statistics, because that really speaks for most people's actual situations and what's happening currently. Now, there's a couple things that are happening. First of all, the age of retirement is being delayed and is continuing to be delayed. We've seen this not only from the ONS data from back in 2019, the retirement ages were 65.1 for a man and 62.9 for a woman. We are now seeing these numbers tend towards 67 instead of 65 and 62. And this has also been rolled out in government policy. We're seeing that instead of the state pension being unlocked at 65, it's now 66, and it will move to 67. Not only are we seeing that, we're seeing a very different shift in retirement, and there's a lot of flexible retirement now. This is very different to the general idea of retirement, which is you would work your 40 years and then stop, and you'd never work again, and those 20 years would be your golden year. There's been much bigger pushes on working from home and doing part part work, like sandwich courses, doing 6 months on and taking 6 months off. That kind of brings me to my third point, which is the digitalization and remote working. This was never a thing back when you were looking at retirement when you were a baby boomer. When they were 20, the internet didn't exist. It was not going to be something you could work from home. You were always going to have to go in and do your work. But at the end of that, you got to retire. It's kind of hard to answer this question because there is no one blanket. This is what retirement looks like. Now, because we have more options, it will actually look very different for a lot of different people. You can definitely still have the original retirement idea or dream that was set out to most people, but you can also have many different things. You could work online. You could live in a van and do van life. Another popular idea is doing mini retirement, so taking a year out throughout your career, taking a year's out and taking time out to travel to different places or do certain things that you don't want to save for later on in life, you want to do now, and you'll take a bit of time out now, save up a bit of money, and it'll cover you over that time period. Mini retirements are very popular and have been used a lot more often, especially with people who get to 40 or 50. They don't want to retire completely, but they do want to start living a bit more. See, the major difference between Gen Z and baby boomers, and in some case millennials, but they're more with Gen Z on this one, is that retirement back then was promised. If you worked for 40 years, you would definitely have your retirement at the end. The state pension would take care of you, and if that didn't, you also had your own pension pot you could take care of. Retirement is definitely not a thing for everyone. If you are not focused on it, you will miss out. There will be no retirement age. You will just be working forever until you stop. So that's where my point number 3 comes in. What do you have to do to secure your version of retirement? Okay, there's 3 main ground rules you're going to need to know when you want to actually make your plan for your retirement. There's the cash, the definition, the plan. First of all, the cash. You can't do anything without any money, so you need to get your cash up first, and this is what this whole page is about, get your money up. If you spend every penny you make, you're down the path of you're never going to be able to retire. You need to be able to put money away and put money either in a private pension pot or make your own investment portfolio that can carry you on in later in life. If you have no free money you can put towards any of these things, you will never retire. There's 2 main ways you can either get this money. You can either earn more money, or you can decrease your expenses, and that will allow you to keep some of the money you already earn. Ideally, you do both. You reduce your outgoings and you increase your income. And this will give you a massive bonus of amount of money that you can use towards your retirement or other things as well. What I recommend for most people though is to cut their expenses, because these are the quickest wins. You can cut a subscription and keep that money next month. But I'd recommend after you've done that for a while, start trying to increase your income. If that's not something you don't want to do, then fine. And if you can decrease your expenses enough to get the money you need, that's fine. But to increase your income, you could do things like flip stuff on the side, so you go on FreeCycle and places like that and flip the stuff that you get for free. You can start drop shipping stores, or there's loads and loads of different stuff you can do. You could, work for Uber Eats, you could do overtime at your job, you could get a better job, loads of different ways to increase your income. So first of all, that's the cash. You've got that now. You either decrease your expenses or you've increased your income enough to get you your cash. Then you need the definition. What is your definition of retirement? Is it the traditional, you work 40 years at this job that you kind of like or don't like or whatever, and then at the end of it you get to retire and you have 20 years to live however you want, and you'll have a pool of money that you've either paid into a pension pot with that cash we've just found, or you're making your investment account and you're going to use that, which is again we found from the cash before, and you're going to use that to fund whatever lifestyle you want. Your retirement will look different for you. This was not the case back in the day. You couldn't choose how your retirement looked. Now you can. So define it for you. Are you someone who would hate the idea of just sat there doing nothing for 20 years? Like you kind of need something to do or some project to work on? If so, then you might want to take an approach where you work a couple days from the office and it's part-time, or you do your own project work, or you start something up now. Loads of different things, but define it for you. What does it look like for you and your retirement? Define it. Finally, your plan. From here, the plan will differ because different people will have different definitions of retirement and what that will look like for them. But ideally what you need to do is find the number that you're going to need to take out or need to come from somewhere for retirement. So for example, say you wanted to earn £36,000 a year from your retirement. You're like, if I could get that, I could live my ideal retired dream. I'd work a little bit and I would use this money to fund the rest of my life. Using the 4% rule, which basically means in an investment account, you can withdraw 4% and you won't lose money over the long term. Assuming you're investing in an index like the S&P 500, which returns on average over the last 100 years, 10%, 4% will be conservative and you'll be fine. We divide 36,000 by 0.04, you get 900K. So that's how much you need to have invested right now in today's money if you wanted to pull out 36K in today's money. That is your plan. You need to get to that 900 figure. Now, if your cash that you've separated, if you see that you invest that and compound interest, it actually grows to that number, well done, you're on track. You don't really need to pay attention to the rest of this video. You're done. If your number is not, that's when you need to look at other ways of getting your money up. If you want to be able to retire with 40, 50, however much, and it's not enough or you don't have the amount you need right now, you need to find a way to bridge yourself and bridge the gap between you now and the amount of money you need in retirement. For most people, it'll be 10, 20, 30 years down the line. So you have enough money and enough time, along with compound interest, to actually get to that number. But For most people who aren't thinking about it and didn't watch this video, you're going to realize that you're not going to get to retirement if you didn't think about it. The plan will look different for everyone, but you'll have a number, everyone will have a number, and you just need to work your way back. How much do you need to invest right now getting 10% in the S&P to get to that number? Is it not enough? You need to up your contribution. How do you up your contribution? Either decrease your expenses or increase your income. It's not rocket science, it's just numbers in, numbers out. You need to get that number to match this number, and you can only do that by investing so much over a longer period of time and getting 10%. Once you've got the number you need to invest, you can put it in your investing account. Sometimes it'll automatically come out of that account and get invested. I can show you how to do that if you want. What you need to do is figure out what your number of retirement is and then divide it by 0.4. That is your number that you need to get to now. Define the age as well at which you want to be able to get that number. So if you wanted to withdraw the 36,000 and you want it to be by 50, you then need to minus 50 and your age. That's how many years you've got to get that amount of money up. Remember, this is in today's money, but you'll have compound interest to work alongside you and actually boost you towards this goal. So is retirement achievable for Gen Z? Yes, it'll just look slightly different. Number two, what does that actually look like? Well, it looks different for different people. You can have the traditional retirement of you work 40 years and then your pension will pay out the other 20, or you can do a hybrid approach where you work on and off throughout your whole career and throughout your whole life. But there is a real risk if you don't think about it and you don't act on it, you will never be able to retire. That was never a thing back in the day. There was always a promised state pension or something that would pick you up at the end of your retired life. Now, that doesn't really exist. You need to make that for yourself. And then how do you actually make that for yourself? Well, first of all, you find the figure that you need and what your retirement looks like for you. Remember, you're going to define it for you and define your number, dividing it by 0.04. If you want to see what the state pension will actually look like when you get to retirement age and why it's not going to be there, watch this video I did here because it will explain everything you need to know and how you need to get your finances in order. I go into it in more depth and how you can get to your number. So watch that video now.